Let's give you insights and analysis then on the Gauteng State of the Province address. I'm joined by political analyst Dirk Kotze, who joins me from Pretoria. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you for talking to me. So the Premier, David Makhura, this speech that he's delivering, interestingly, not much reflection on the promises that were made last year that were very specific and were, for the most part, time-bound, but this time around we're getting a new vision, growing Gauteng together without reflecting on what has been achieved or has not been achieved since July 2019.
Yes, that is indeed so. The speech to a large extent is looking forward. It referred here and there to some of the points that it raised after last year's national and provincial election. But in essence, it is more about, although a lot of the things that it referred to, for example, the spatial development and economic zones, about the 5 zones that it took one by one in discussion, the technology hub that's here in Tshwane, those things come from previous speeches. So he built a lot on what has been established in the past already. Some of the plans that he announced over time, but he did not specifically refer to them. I think what he had in mind with this speech is to try to present something slightly in contrast with that of the SONA speech by President Ramaphosa, of focusing less on sort of more general or abstract ideas, and rather try to focus on very specific and especially the economic focus areas. Other areas like, for example, about health and education and security aspects of the province did not receive at all as much attention as the economy.
And of course, one of the big promises that were made last year was around dealing with the healthcare situation in the province and the problematic hospitals that he listed by name last year. Those don't get a mention as to how far he has gone in fixing those. But I think more glaringly, Prof, is the issue of the e-tolls, the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project. Last year it got a specific mention and there were some timelines. By October we were going to find out what's going to be the future. Then it was kicked to touch with Cabinet, national government saying that we'll get us a clear indication after its first meeting of 2020 in February. That has happened, but we still are none the wiser about the future of this system, and it doesn't even get a single mention from the Premier of Gauteng today.
Yes, that is indeed so. I looked yesterday to last year's speech, and that it was quite prominent in last year's speech. As you say, this time I listened to the first hour and a half, and it wasn't mentioned at all during that period. I think part of it is possibly, in order to try to explain it, is the fact that there is possibly not a position between government and the Gauteng province where that they've reached consensus about it. We know the position of the Minister of Finance. He wants the user pay principle to continue. The provincial position is obviously to abolish the e-toll system. And I don't think what I've heard last from that intergovernmental discussions or negotiations, that they haven't reached the point of consensus. So I think that's possibly a reflection of that inability to come to a conclusion on that. Taking into account, obviously, also the fact that we are approaching next year's local government election, where it might become, again, quite a major issue like in 2016.
Yeah, and were you surprised that the Life Asset Dimeni scandal and the tragedy there also didn't get a mention? In other words, is it your sense that the issue has been dealt with extensively with the processes that have happened to the point that Gauteng is able to move on with its first citizen delivering an entire State of the Province address without touching on that issue?
I think that is possibly his way of thinking about it, is to say this is a matter that we want to put behind us. We don't want to revisit that and by implication raise some of the problematic issues for the ANC government. Rather try to focus on a more forward-looking approach and hopefully create more enthusiasm and more trust in the government. I have to emphasize the fact that after last year's provincial election, we have to remember that the ANC has a majority of only 1 seat in the provincial legislature. So their support base in the province has dropped dramatically at the time of last year's election. So it is not as if the government is in the same relatively powerful position as in previous years.
So let's talk lastly then, Prof, about perhaps some of the positives. Do you see alignment between the State of the Nation address and the grand plans that President Cyril Ramaphosa outlined and this State of the Province address? I saw that the smart city around Lanseria gets a mention with a timeline there that is sort of set by the Premier, but also you're also seeing coordination of the various strengths of the various regions of Gauteng. So Ekurhuleni gets industrialization, as does the southern parts of Gauteng. Is there alignment between these two visions?
There is to some extent, yes. The emphasis of President President Ramaphosa's SONA speech on the role of government with respect to infrastructure, that has appeared also to a large extent in this provincial address. Also the call by President Ramaphosa that South Africans must buy South African products, that again was repeated here. I think where the Premier Makura took it further is to concentrate a lot on the focus on township economies, and that undertakings on businesses within the township must be used by the local government as well as provincial government as suppliers. So there are these type of similarities, and I think therefore there is to a large extent the support from the province. But at the same time, Gauteng is quite a unique province. It's physically the smallest province, but in terms of economic development, the richest province in terms of its provincial production, and therefore it's very difficult to compare it with, let's say, the Northern Cape or the Eastern Cape or even the Free State. So there will be some aspects which, for example, the emphasis on technology, the emphasis on the digital economy that must be established here, the emphasis on logistics, and I think the fact that OR Tambo is in the province makes it a huge difference compared to other provinces, and the economy that's developing around that, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Prof. Dirk Kotze, thank you so much for joining me unpacking the State of the Province address.